All right, guys, we are on Unit 16, Session 3, and we are continuing in the book of Daniel for this unit. We're in Daniel chapter 5 today, and we are seeing sort of the next king in Babylon's time, King Belshazzar. This is actually going to be the last king, and this story is going to recount why that is. So just so we're reminded, Israel is in captivity for about 70 years. Um, so this is somewhere kind of towards the beginning of that. Um, and Belshazzar is the king. Nebuchadnezzar is no longer the king. He's been succeeded um, by Belshazzar. And upon raiding Israel and Jerusalem years prior, they looted and grabbed a ton of things out of the temple. And this story kind of revolves around a party that's being thrown. Belshazzar, throws a party, and he uses some of the cups and the chalices that were used in the temple for worship purposes, and used them to throw a party. And obviously that's wrong, and you're taking holy items that are meant for the temple and using them for worldly things. And so what happens is a really unique story. Um, Basically a hand, like literally just a disembodied hand, just appears and begins writing on the wall. And it says that the king is so horrified that he soils himself. I mean, he was this apparently was a freaky thing to see. I mean, imagine just you're at a party and just having a good time, and you see a hand just writing on the wall. I'm sure the king at first thought maybe he had too much to drink, but this was legitimate. This is what was happening, and it writes in Aramaic, tekel tekel. Um, no, that's wrong. Mene mene tekel parson. That's my American way of pronouncing it, but that's basically the words, and you see that in Daniel chapter 5. And so we'll talk about what that means. Um, but within that, before Daniel interprets what's on the wall, and tells the king about it, he first tells Belshazzar like why this is happening. It's like, before I tell you what this means and what's going to happen, here's why. And he basically talks about how he has been abusing and persecuting God's people, but also, I guess, with them overtaking Israel, they thought that their gods were more powerful than the God of the Jews, the one true God. And with that, he did not glorify the God of the Bible. In fact, it says in verse 23 or 24, can't remember, but it says, "You have not glorified the God who holds your life breath in his hand." Like, just because Israel is under captivity doesn't mean that God's status has changed. God is sovereign, omnipotent, powerful, and all knowledgeable, there's nothing that's changed about God due to God's people's circumstances. And Belshazzar learns this the hard way. Um, so Daniel comes and he interprets the dream, or not the dream. He interprets the writing on the wall and basically translates it. And he says, let me pull that up so I don't tell you the wrong thing. Um, but it says, Mene Mene is like the first one. And basically, let's see, that means God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. So, in other words, like, it's over, Belshazzar, like it's over. And then Tekel means that you have been weighed on the balance and found deficient. And then Perez, or Parson, means that your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. In other words, God says, Belshazzar, you were done. You were finished. And that's what would happen. It says in verse 30 that Belshazzar died that night. Now because Daniel interpreted this, they like put a purple robe on him and honored him, made him third in command in the kingdom. But the Medes and the Persians would move in, and they would be the ones that would be in charge of that area, and would again, keep the Jews under captivity. But one day they would be released by those same people. So I think really what this story is all about, it's an odd story. It's not It's not one that we talk about a ton, but it is just this example of what was wrong with what Belshazzar did. It wasn't anything inherent about a cup or a bowl or whatever they used at this party. It was because that was meant for worshiping God. It was meant and designed for worshiping God. And so thinking through uh, how we misuse and abuse the things that God has given us for worshiping Him, right? And that's a conversation that could go on for a long time. And so thinking through those things, thinking how are we being disobedient in those things, and acknowledging that, and and it probably won't be a disembodied hand writing on the wall, but there will be things that God uses to get our attention. But it's also, again, it's just this repetitive theme of God's hand of guidance and judgment in the midst of the Jewish people's judgment. Right? God has not changed. His plan is still for them, and the Abrahamic covenant is still true at this time. Whoever blesses you, I will bless. Whoever curses you, I will curse. And so we see that in really until Jesus comes and establishes the new covenant. And then finally, um, we just see if you look at this, if you look at Daniel here, God using Daniel and his faithfulness, we talked about last week. It reminds me very much of the story of Joseph, how Joseph was faithful through persecution, and God used him to interpret a dream that led to his prosperity. Daniel's now interpreting this writing that he's reading an inscription of God's judgment, but he's even blessed for this. So, anyways, I hope this helps you kind of understand the story a little better. Lean heavily on your notes this week, especially if it's an unfamiliar story to you. The notes are really good. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. So, thank you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you Sunday.